When people talk about developing a library of grooves, what they're really referring to is a rhythmic, melodic, and/or harmonic application to a given style, which usually relates to playing accompanying bass parts. Learning about different styles of music is part of what it takes to be a skilled, adaptable, and musical bass player. You know, it's got to be said that listening is where a lot of learning takes place regarding learning different styles. But I'm not talking about just learning the bass parts, but also understanding all of the parts. This way you can begin to understand where your bass part fits into the overall acoustic blueprint. You know, an accomplished player is an accomplished listener. So what I want you to do is listen to recordings and copy the bass parts. Learn to write them out so you can imitate them closely. Imitation is the natural process to discovering your own individuality. Pretty much all funk music can be broken down into two basic approaches, which include ostinato patterns and syncopation. Ostinato patterns are repeated motifs or musical phrases that can be used as core concepts to create new ideas from. Syncopation is created by shifting the emphasis from a strong beat to a weak beat. One of the most common ways that this is done in funk music is by accenting every third 16th note in a phrase. Check out how this funk groove employs both of these concepts. Okay, so this next example is an 8-bar groove that's based on two simple motifs. Now, what I wanted to draw your attention to just quickly is this dampening system that I'm using on this track. And this is a very cool system. It uses a lever here, and when you kind of put it on, you can set it up to different degrees of sensitivity. And I find that you have to kind of play around with it to get the right settings, but it's very cool. Once it's set, it's all locked in with Allen keys and stuff. And it takes it from, like, you know, just having your normal open strings where you're getting the full ringing tone to degrees of muted notes. So now you can hear that when I'm playing this, this is kind of muted. A lot of guys think this kind of simulates a flat wound sound, and they're kind of right. It kind of does that a bit, but what it's really doing is creating this palm mute effect without you having to put your palm on the end of the bass and play everything with your thumb. You can enunciate everything that you do with your normal two-finger technique. So I like that concept, and it really makes these funk grooves kind of stand out and really pop in the mix. So if we look at this groove, if you look at bar 1, this is the core groove. So this is kind of like the question. So you'll notice that note for note, this also happens in bar 5. Okay, and then if I looked at bar 3 and bar 7, we have variations of this core groove, because what happens if you look at the end of bar 2, you have the A push into that next bar. So that's kind of anticipating into that next thing. So instead of playing on the downbeat, I have from the push. So it'd be like 1, 2, 3, 4. And then on the end of that bar of beat 4, I've got those little stabs that work nicely with the drum pattern. So coming in to that second core groove, or the variation of that groove in bar 3, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. And so what happens then is these two sort of question motifs set this up nicely to have these answer motifs which occur in the second bar, the fourth bar, the sixth bar, and then the eighth bar. And you can see how in the bar two, I've got this 3, 4, 1. So it's really got that nice little melodic flavor, although it's a simple line, you know, playing the fifth, double chromatic into the root, down to the root, then a diatonic approach into the third, scale passing tone leading us up to the fifth, and then third, root, and root. So, and that's just a nice little melodic line. It's very simple, A minor pentatonic kind of idea. So if I put those two ideas together, this is what I've got. Okay, so then moving on to the next variation, or the next variation of the answer groove, which would be in bar 4, we have this where I go, and I'm sort of shaking that little shake vibrato a la Paul Jackson on that flat 3 there. So that's kind of very cool. Notice how the first one, the second one, and it's a very slight variation, but it makes all the difference, and it creates this huge melodic content within this line. Okay, so what I want you to check out is the melodic variation here in bar 8. Now, as you can see from the note choices throughout this whole groove, it's really based on an A minor 7th chord or an A7 sharp 9 type sound. What I want you to do is notice the use of chord tones, diatonic approach notes, scale passing tones, and also chromatic approach notes within this line. The next example that I wanted to play for you is a 12-bar West African 3/4 groove. Now, I'm by no means an expert on traditional African music, but I have been influenced by some of the more contemporary African basses like Michel Alibo and also Etienne Mbappe. This next groove was inspired by a groove I heard off a Salif Keta record. Okay, so this next example is based on what's called an Adowa high life groove. This groove is in 3/4, and it's really like a modern take on a traditional West African rhythm. So the subdivisions of the pulse are 16th notes, and being highly syncopated, this is going to translate quite easily into a 3/4 funk groove. So if you look at the PDF that comes with this, you can see that this is based really entirely on a G minor tonality. And the groove melodically uses a lot of minor pentatonic ideas. Occasionally it's resolving to the flat 3 and the flat 6 in places, but it's always circling its way back to the G minor 7. Again, so this groove is based on a motif that's found in bar 1, which then repeats itself in bars 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11. So throughout the whole form, this motif happens 6 times. So that motif is going to go like this. Now, the answer to that question motif basically happens twice, which is in bars 2 and 10, and that's going to go like this. So that's kind of a cool thing when you put it together. It goes like this. And a little bit more up to tempo. So what happens throughout this 12 bar structure is that it starts to vary the motif on this sort of answer part. So every second bar of the of that form is going to be using a different variation. So if we look at the first variation, which starts on bar 4, this is going to go like this. So if we put it together with the first motif, it goes. So then putting it together for the first 4 bars, I have this. Okay, so if we then look at the next variation, this is going to be in bar 8 and or actually bar 6, where this is where it resolves to the flat 3. So we have this pattern here which goes. So, and then it goes back to that question motif, and then in bar 8 we have it going down to the E flat. So it goes. So if I put that whole groove together up until that point, I have this. And notice how when it ends on that phrase, it pushes the G on the last 16th note. So when we then get to the next bar, although that's repeating that original motif, we don't play the downbeat there. It just goes 1 on that particular point. And then in bar 12, it creates a little turnaround into the 5 chord going like this. So the whole groove is this. As you can see, rhythm plays a vital role in developing a library of stylistic ideas as both a comping player and a soloist. What you need to develop is a strong sense of the basic beat or pulse as well as its subdivisions. You need to also be able to hear and recognize rhythmic patterns to create musical phrases and ideas to play off. And you also need to learn how to recognize and interpret rhythmic phrasing in written music. If you're interested in becoming a better improvising bass player and learning great musical content from arpeggios to grooves, then subscribe to my channel now. If you liked this video today, then be sure to support my channel by giving it a big thumbs up. And if you really like this video, then please check out my books, my membership website, and my Skype lessons. Until next time, practice smart, work hard, and play creatively.